Was Jessy Mendiola really disappointed that Angel Locsin was once again cast in the lead role of Darna? Jessy Mendiola and Angel Locsin have been hot topics online recently as both of these actresses and TV personalities were caught in between controversies involving another local actor and TV host, Luis Manzano. News about Jessy being the reason for Angel and Luis' breakup spread like wildfire across the internet. This news was followed by more speculation involving the suspected love triangle between the three showbiz stars. Recently, news about Angel's lead role in Mars Ravello's Darna made noise on social media. Jessy had something to say about it. Not only that she, allegedly, stole her boyfriend from her, and a failed attempt to snatch the Darna role from her, Jessy Mendiola settled to just copy Angel Locsin's fashion statement. And oh, yes, the sexiest woman in the Philippines title. Invite you to watch the video. New Zealand offers scholarships for Filipino students. How? Find out here. The ambassador to the Philippines of New Zealand, David Strachan, encouraged Filipino students to apply for the scholarship programs his country offers. According to an article released by ABS-CBN News, New Zealand is annually offering 24 postgraduate scholarships to Filipinos in the field of disaster and risk management, agri-industries and renewable energies. We would like to get more students from Mindanao, including Moro students and Lumad students, to apply for these scholarships, Strachan said. The ambassador also added that the number of Filipinos students in their country is rapidly increasing, with 3,600 in 2015. According to Strachan, New Zealand has 8 universities which are included in the list of the best universities around the globe. New Zealand is the only country to have all of its universities included in the list of top 500 best universities worldwide, according to Regional Communications and Strategic Relations Manager in Southeast Asia for Education New Zealand, Ben Burrows. New Zealand also ranked 7th and best at science and reading in the world and 13th in math, according to the Programme for International Student Assessment, PISA, published by the Organization for Economic Company Operation and Development, OECD. The country is also among the nations who have consistently high rates of the Education Index published by the UN's Human Development Index. Invite you to watch the video. The family of this girl who already passed away have found a hidden message behind this mirror in her room. Read this. It was back in May 2014, when a 13-year-old girl named Athena Orchard passed away because of bone cancer. She then left behind a family that's saddened by her sudden death. After her death, her parents Dean and Caroline decided to make sure that her things are in place. They were searching through her stuff when they found this full-length mirror standing against a wall in her room. After they took the mirror out, they found a long message written at the back of it. It was then when they realized that Athena had secretly done it after she knew about her condition. After knowing that she's already left with a few more moments, she decided to write down positive thoughts behind the mirror. Through this, she'd be able to make her family happy despite that she's already gone. At the back of the mirror, she has given the real meaning of love, happiness and importance of living each day to the fullest. Invite you to watch the video. Trump presidency increases risk for Canadian troops headed to Latvia, Howard Dean says. A top Democratic politician says Russian President Vladimir Putin will undoubtedly test U.S. President-elect Donald Trump by moving troops into a former Soviet country, including one where Canadian troops will be operating in 2017. Howard Dean, former governor of Vermont and former chair of the Democratic National Committee, says Trump talked during the presidential race as if he would undermine the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and warned Putin will try to test him. Who knows how, but I think it'll involve troops. It'll involve Georgia, Moldova, Ukraine or even Latvia, Dean said in an interview with Evan Solomon, host of CTV's Question Period. That's a significant prediction for Canada, which has 450 Canadian soldiers deploying to Latvia in early 2017 as part of a NATO force. NATO has been beefing up its presence in Eastern Europe in response to recent Russian action, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced last summer that the Canadian Armed Forces will lead a 1,000-person battle group and supply armoured vehicles for the open-ended mission. Asked whether those soldiers are in a more dangerous situation now, With Putin likely to test to the U.S. president-elect, Dean warned there's danger anytime there's uncertainty in foreign policy. We don't know what he's going to do. But I think the foreign policy stuff is really scary because a couple of words out of place, you can give people the impression that they can go ahead and do something that you don't want them to do. That is very frightening, Dean said. More dangerous, is the world more dangerous or less dangerous now that Donald Trump is the president-elect? Solomon asked. It's much more dangerous. Because uncertainty breeds danger and Donald Trump is uncertainty, Dean said. Trump has praised Putin as a strong leader, downplayed the impact of Russian aggression in Ukraine, and threatened to withhold American support for NATO missions if member countries don't meet promised defense spending targets. A spokeswoman for Defense Minister Harjit Sajjan didn't answer a question about whether Sajjan agreed with Dean on the potential for increased risk to Canadian soldiers. The minister looks forward to a productive working relationship with the new U.S. Secretary of Defense, whenever he or she is named, just as he enjoys a strong relationship with the current administration and Secretary Ashton Carter, Jordan Owens wrote in an email to CTV News. Now more than ever Canada remains committed to NATO and to the promises we have made to our NATO allies, and we expect the same principles of solidarity and collective defense will continue to guide NATO into the future. Trump advisor Steve Bannon, a Nazi, Dean said Trump is a complicated person, pointing out he named Republican stalwart Reince Priebus to be chief of staff, but Steve Bannon, CEO of the far-right website Breitbart News, as chief strategist. Dean says Priebus is a reasonable person, while Bannon is a Nazi. It's a big word and I don't usually use it unless somebody's really anti-Semitic and really misogynist and really anti-black, Dean said. It makes me very nervous. I mean, it calls into question Donald Trump's judgment, and that's the problem. So we don't know what to expect from Donald Trump, he added. At the same time, Trump's daughter Ivanka converted to Judaism following her marriage to Jared Kushner, and the couple are raising their children in the Orthodox faith. Dean admits he doesn't understand how Trump squares the circle, and said minority community should be fearful. When you run a campaign based on hate, which is what he did, you run a terrible risk of somehow liberating people's worst instincts, and that's just what's happened, Dean said. Invite you to watch the video. With Trump, Gingrich and GOP calling the shots, NASA may go back to the moon. NASA has struggled for decades with strategic uncertainty, and there's nothing like a partisan transition in the White House to discombobulate everyone. There will surely be a new administrator, and new ambitions, and disfavored programs. With associated budget cuts, Earth science is a likely target. Right this minute, though, no one seems to know what's going to happen with America's civilian space agency. The chaotic Trump transition operation has yet to send a delegation to NASA headquarters. NASA's in-house transition team is standing by, and you can imagine that people are getting a bit jittery. There are deadlines to meet. Everything's in a holding pattern. In the spirit of promiscuous speculation, we will float this notion, the moon is back. With Donald Trump as president-elect, moon colony-loving Newt Gingrich hovering close at hand, and Republicans controlling both houses of Congress, NASA may soon be told to get ready to do what it already did back in the 1960s and 70s, put people on the moon, this time to stay. There's a saying, the moon is a red destination, an asteroid is a blue destination. It is very plausible to speculate that the new administration will insert a mission to the lunar surface, probably international in character, as a step on the way to Mars, John Locsin, the Dean of Space Policy Analysts, told The Washington Post. Politically, most of the other countries of the world have identified the moon as an interesting destination, and they don't really have the capabilities to talk about sending people to Mars. If we want to assert international leadership, we would take a position in leading a coalition to return to the moon. This is a competitive field. Europe, Japan, Russia and China have all expressed interest in crewed missions to the lunar surface sometime in the next 2 decades. One of the people mentioned in news reports as a potential NASA administrator is Representative James Bridenstine, Republican from Oklahoma, who earlier this year drafted legislation he calls the American Space Renaissance Act. He's called for a return to the moon as part of sweeping reforms at NASA. Bridenstine has also been mentioned as a potential Secretary of the Air Force. In a written statement released by his press office, Bridenstine said, "At this point, it is speculation as far as I know." Eric Berger at Ars Technica has more on the insider-outsider possibilities for the top NASA job. Keith Cowing at NASA Watch also weighs in with an online game to guess the next NASA chief. Bridenstine would be an outsider, but many Republicans might prefer Scott Pace, a former NASA political appointee under President George W. Bush. Pace succeeded Locsin as director of George Washington University Space Policy Institute. In a radio interview on the Diane Rems show a while back, Pace advocated a return to the Moon. "The reason for that is not simply because I have a fondness for lunar science but because I think it could meet an important international objective, which is bringing other countries along with us, particularly emerging space powers, such as India and, I'll also say it, China, that NASA can and should be a foreign policy tool of the United States. And I think a human return to the Moon poses some opportunities for international outreach in ways that asteroid or Mars missions right now cannot." Some boilerplate background: during the Cold War space race, NASA's Apollo 11 mission in July 1969 succeeded in putting the first man on the Moon. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin and then 10 more American astronauts left bootprints in lunar regolith across 6 Apollo missions, the last in 1972. No human being has been beyond low Earth orbit since that final moonshot. NASA now says it is on a journey to Mars, though this is more of a branding exercise for a suite of loosely connected enterprises than a fully integrated and funded program. The agency is building a new, heavy-lift rocket, called the Space Launch System, SLS, and a new crew capsule, Orion, both of which could be part of a Mars mission architecture. President Obama in a recent op-ed reiterated NASA's stated goal of sending humans to Mars in the 2030s. Agency officials envision an orbital mission first. SpaceX has its own much more ambitious, but not overwhelmingly plausible, plans for a Mars colony. Meanwhile, the Moon is still right there, and many people find it still attractive as a target for exploration. George W. Bush vowed to go back to the Moon, and his administration put together a program, Constellation, that foresaw another Moon landing in 2020. Obama killed Constellation, saying "been there, done that." Congress, however, kept elements of the Constellation package, that big rocket, that new capsule, and so billions of dollars are being spent on hardware that should be ready for launch in the next couple of years. Where to go? Obama's team decided that NASA should visit an asteroid in its natural orbit. That proved harder than expected, so the agency shifted gears, saying it would capture an asteroid and haul it back to lunar orbit. The latest plan is to wrench a boulder off a known asteroid. House Republicans hate the Asteroid Redirect Mission, ARM, and have language in an appropriations bill that would prevent NASA from spending any money on such a mission. Jeff Faust on SpaceNews.com reports that NASA officials continue to push for ARM funding as a necessary element of long-term Mars exploration. However, Casey Dreyer of the Planetary Society writes of ARM, "I predict this mission is almost certainly over." Here's the key factoid: because Congress preserved elements of Constellation, it could be revived under a new administration. NASA has the SLS and the Orion, and to get to the surface of the Moon it would just need a lunar lander, maybe paid for, at least partially, by international partners. And NASA has already been talking about missions in orbit around the Moon in the 2020s. The veterans who run human spaceflight at NASA put themselves in a good position to repivot to the Moon if that became politically mandated. NASA headquarters has been preparing for the transition for months, but the Trump team has gone through upheaval, with Chris Christie and his folks ousted. It appears Trump's NASA transition efforts are being led by Mark Albrecht, who is associated with the first President Bush's ill-fated space exploration initiative of 1989, fleets of spaceships, a moon base, Mars, the whole kit and caboodle, shot down when rumors spread that it would cost $1 gazillion. And then there's Gingrich. He's made a fortune since leaving elected office and isn't going to take a pay cut to be in the new administration, but he's got Trump's ear and is a stalwart guy. Recall that when he ran for president 4 years ago, and was riding high in the polls in advance of the Florida primary. He used his moment in the spotlight to make a stem-winder of a speech about the need to establish a permanent moon colony and explore the solar system. He mentioned one of his earliest ideas, that when at least 13,000 people live on the moon, they could petition to have statehood. Thank you for watching videos. You remember the likes and comments below. Thanks.